You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
It's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to Making Tracks and a very special episode as we welcome back to the show Nick Clark. Nick was one of Saw Gerrera's henchmen in the first season of Star Wars Andor, and we had the chance to catch up with him at Beachhead 2023 in Bournemouth back in February to discuss Andor and many other things. We're at Beachhead 2023 in Bournemouth. I'm in a packed room with Nick Clark. How's it going?
Very well. Yes. Looking forward to the year ahead. And upset that I can't go to Glastonbury this year due to funds.
Oh, okay. I've never been. Is it an expensive trip?
It is these days, especially. I went in 1995 and had a world-changing event.
Who headlined then?
I can't actually remember who headlined it the year I went because I was more interested in surviving, which I did just, and that's another story entirely. But, yeah. My favourite band, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, are apparently playing this year.
Right.
And I'd love to see that.
That is weird you say that because this is nothing to do with Star Wars. I don't know what, but anyway, I have got a gig list of bands I've wanted to see. Over the years, I've ticked off pretty much everyone. And really, the only big band is the Chili Peppers. And I had tickets to see them on might have been the Stadium Arcadium tour, which is 2006-ish, maybe?
Something like that.
Round about there. And I couldn't make it, and I had to give the tickets to a friend who was able to go at the last minute, so I've never seen them.
Oh, that's a shame. I saw them last year in the London Stadium.
Yeah?
And it was one of the best gigs I've ever been to, I think.
They're as good as you hope they'd be?
Yeah, I think they're fab. I think Flea is a god of the bass, and John is just an incredible guitarist, Chad's an amazing drummer, and Anthony's just the mad, crazy Anthony that we all know and love.
And they're all in the 60s now, aren't they?
Yeah. They're athletes to do what they do, and I love their music. I think they're better than the Beatles. They got me into groove and funk and rock pop and all this sort of jazz. I love it. But anyway, that's by the by.
Well, you have inadvertently stumbled on a Star Wars connection because, of course, Flea was in Obi-Wan Kenobi.
He was, yes, and Back to the Future as well. Back in the day, he was Needles, wasn't he? In fact, the whole debacle in Back to the Future 2 of the change in timelines is all down to the dare that Needles offers Marty McFly, isn't it?
The lights.
At the causal level. Yeah. So he's intrinsic and vital to the entire franchise in a very modest way.
I've never thought of it like that.
Yeah, no, I love thinking. I read books on causal effects and causality and quantum science and things like this sometimes, and I find it very interesting.
So, with that logic, is it the macro things that make the biggest differences or the micro things that make the biggest differences?
Oh, I'm not that much of an expert on it, but it's more to do with event creating cause an event, and the what's the word I'm looking for? Is it
like the butterfly effect type thing?
It's the butterfly effect, a timeline of events which are all caused by one or two minor events which escalate over time. You know, I a lot of films are starting to look at that, but I think it's a rich source of inspiration and thought and imagination. Yeah, it's brilliant.
It kind of feeds into Star Wars. I'm steering it back like an expert because there's lots of little things that happen in Star Wars that end up having a bigger effect on the broader storyline. In your life then, because obviously you turned up in Andor, what butterfly effect led to you being on that set and doing the stuff that you did?
To be in the actual programme, I just wanted to try and get into the world, so I signed up with Universal Extras, and I got a job on Star Wars, which was amazing. But if you think about my virtually non-existent role in the series, even though I'm in it for like a fleeting second, or it should have been, if you look at the story of Star Wars, it's actually quite an important part in the dialogue in the cave where they decide they're going to war. And then and they've got the files of the Death Star and all that, or they're trying to get it out.
Yeah.
And so my funny, irrelevant little character is almost, you could argue, at the causal level, intrinsic to Luke Skywalker defeating the Death Star.
I wouldn't argue with that.
Good. I'm glad. Because I would argue back if you didn't.
I kind of wish I'd argue now, because I'd want to hear the counter. No, it's totally that. There's loads of things like that happen in Star Wars. And also, especially because that moment in Andor is so pivotal, because Saw's going to kind of go one way and Luthen steers him another. And like you say, your guy's right there for it. And there are no small roles in Star Wars.
Well, I'm glad you said that. But there were no small roles. There were just bigger roles than other big roles.
That's a fair assumption.
Yes, and it was a dream come true, really, working on the entire thing. But I'd like to do more, if I'm honest. But we'll have to see how things go. Not being able to drive is a real problem I've worked out in the film world.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to get to some level of kudos where I can get chauffeur driven everywhere or something.
Chauffeur driven makes all the sense.
Yeah.
Get Flea to do it. We know he can drive.
Do you? I wouldn't want to get in the car with that man.
So when you apply, because I don't know, I'm making an assumption now. You apply through Universal Extras and you land on a role on Star Wars, which is obviously an important thing to do and of huge interest to you. Were there other things that you did before that? Did you just drop lucky and it just came about straight away? How did it work?
I did do a couple of other shoots. I was in Rocket Man, but I got cut from that as well. I'm such a bad actor that I can't even make it as an extra, which is a real indication of how limited in my faculties I am. But no, we were in a scene in Rocket Man, and I because I've always been trained, I wanted to be a film director since I first saw Star Wars at the age of 5.
Yeah.
And I've went to film school after school, and I got degrees and masters, all that in filmmaking. But I was in Rocket Man, and because I had never been on a Hollywood film set before, I was so in awe of all the crew and the cast and the equipment around me in the set.
And they're all there. It's the full kit and caboodle.
Yeah, we were in a big crowd scene, big crew, big set of the. It was a mock-up of the building where Elton John first did Crocodile Rock, I think it was. And because I'm on set, I'm so excited. I've been done up and everything, that I'm watching the camera come down the ramp. And I keep looking at the camera because I'm going, wow, this is brilliant. Look at that, look at them go. But I'm looking at the camera, you know what I mean? And of course I got cut. And the scene we're in is in, but it's just after it's me because I'm looking at the camera like an idiot. And then we did another one. We did, what was the one about 101 Dalmatians? But it was
Cruella.
Cruella, yeah. And I'm actually in that in a still. But the reason in the film it's a still, because a little girl's in a mansion and she jumps on a stage and she runs through a crowd and she goes on a swing, and you're meant to see it, I think, originally swing in a big thing over this crowd. But it's a hard story to explain without sounding like a complete oddball. But I was in a contorted, strange position, and I didn't want to rise up in case I came up late when everyone else had bent over and moved backwards from the swing, because I thought the camera was somewhere else.
Right.
And so I was like this, right? You won't be able to see this on radio, but I'm leaning backwards with my hands in the air, and I held that position.
Right.
Okay. But now in the moving image that wouldn't work, so I'm standing there like an idiot in an odd shape. Okay.
Gotcha.
But I make it into the film, and because he does it, instead of showing it in a video sequence, he does a series of stills, so the swing goes up. But what they haven't told me or anyone, but I know it's true, is because I cocked up a multi-million-dollar scene, and it should be swinging, but it was my fault that they couldn't do it. But but it's another blink and you'll miss it shot, and I'm in there. I'm in the foreground, sort of looking weird, but. Yeah, I gave the director an unwitting headache that day.
Well, I would suggest that you were badly directed rather than it being your
it was a
fault.
crowd full of people, and he had to look out over a sea of literally a few hundred people. And I thought I was at the back from where the camera was, but no, I'm quite near the front because I didn't know the camera was there. So, yeah, he must have been fuming when he got the rushes back. And I did it for each shot as well. We did 3 takes.
Yeah.
And each shot, I didn't want to come up in case I ruined what I thought was the shot. But I hope he'll speak to me again anyway if I ever meet him
Was
again.
that Dexter Fletcher?
No, he was the guy who did Rocket Man.
Ah, sorry, yes, Cruella, yeah.
Cruella was, I can't remember what his name was. I looked it up at one point, but I've forgotten. I think it might be Giles someone.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm right.
He'll remember you, though.
Oh, no, he won't. I was just an extra. He was too busy.
If you pulled the face, maybe...
No, he was rushing. We were all dressed up in this, I don't know what period it was, but old school, like, hairdos and costumes.
Yeah.
Like Edwardian or Victorian or something like that.
I've not seen that film. It's on Disney Plus. I do need to see it because Emma Stone's awesome, and it did look like fun. I think my wife's seen it, so I do need to catch up with that one.
I was hoping to meet Emma Stone, but I didn't. But I had a chat with Emma Thompson for a bit.
Oh, wow!
Yeah, that was huge. And I met Mark Strong very briefly. I made a joke that he didn't find was very funny. I said it was his birthday, and I said. I thought about getting you a Mr. Strong book from eBay, and as he was passing by, and he stopped and he pointed at me and said, "If I had £1 for every time someone had given me a Mr. Strong book, I'd be a millionaire." And so I chuckled, and off he went. But yeah, he's probably heard that one quite a few times.
Well, he should change his name. Actors can do that.
Hi, this is Dorian Kinji, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Here at Beachhead 2023, in the foyer where all the Star Wars stuff is Joker Squad, there's a guy, and I don't know if you've met him yet, you may have done, called Martin. And Martin's a friend of Dave Tree, who's doing the event with us here. And Martin owns the world's only Constable Zeuvium museum. And Constable Zuvio was in The Force Awakens for 3 frames. And he's got his own museum.
Are you serious?
I'm very serious.
I don't even know what that character is.
Oh, you won't, because you probably blinked when he was on screen. It's a literal blink and you're missing character.
And how come he's got a museum then?
So the character in the film, I think he was probably meant to be a much more prominent character. And when they chose the figures to make, his colour scheme, by design, the designers designed him to be in the same colours that Boba Fett was in.
Right.
So you see him, it goes, it's the green and the red, and it's quite clearly a Boba Fett influenced thing. So they made an action figure room. So there's loads of Zuvio figures. So Martin started collecting Constable Zuvio figures. He now has 400 plus of the 3 3/4 inch carded figures,
right,
and about 70 or 80 of the Black Series figures, and decided just in his lunacy to set up a Zuvium as a sort of a shrine to Constable Zuvio in his downstairs toilet. And he does virtual tours. You can do a virtual tour of his toilet, basically.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Well, that's the thing that would upset me a little bit about my character, if we can use that term loosely, because you're right, in a sense there's no small characters in Star Wars, but the real benchmark of being a Star Wars character is getting a figure, isn't it? And I don't think I was in it for enough for that.
But if you think about it, back in the day when the films were coming out, especially the original film was coming out, Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, how important they were to the story, never had an action figure. Grand Moff Tarkin, arguably the baddie, even more as of a boss than Vader in that film, no action figure.
Why is that?
I don't know.
Is it because they're more... I don't know what the words would be. They're
not very
family.
toyetic.
They're not. It's like having a dad figure as a toy is probably not brilliant.
Yeah.
But then you'd think Grand Moff Tarkin would be in it, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know what they're thinking is that. Maybe it's because he was too evil. But they had Darth Vader. I don't know why that is.
So when you were a young man and you were at film school and the whole going through that process, what was the goal then?
I always wanted to be a film director. That was, since I was young, I wanted to be the British George Lucas, basically. Right. But when I was at film school, I got in with stupid activities, very dangerous. Scuppered myself very badly for a long time, but I was actually at film college with Edgar Wright at the same time.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, that was huge. But the thing is, it doesn't surprise me at all he's made it, because when everyone else had to bring in their 10-15 minute project, he came in with an hour and a half, 2 hour long movie, that he'd made with his friends. Yeah. And he's just committed every day, working hard. Yeah. And I was a fool. I got into things that were dangerous, and I became very ill for a long time. So I'm better now, but it's been arduous. It's been awful. So
where you are now, getting back in through the extra side of it and getting in onto sets and into that position where you're in and around it again, does that feel like, to a degree, you're picking up kind of where you inadvertently left off, or does it feel like a totally new thing?
It's like a totally new thing within the same world, because I mean, I was always trained to be behind the camera and writing scripts, making films. I'd act as well for my friends, and we made loads of silly films.
Yeah.
But because I scuppered myself, no one's going to give me a position of responsibility at that level with millions of pounds to make a film, and it's just totally savvy and fully in control of your faculties and all this sort of jazz.
Yeah.
And it's not like I don't have the ideas. My mind is a constant revolving stream of good ideas for comedies and action and sci-fi and things like this. But again, if I'm honest, I'm not the hardest worker, because it's just, after what I went through, I take each day at a time now, and just if I can get something spiritual out of the day, like, and go to bed happy,
that's a win.
That's a win.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't for a long time.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
So when you're in that role, minimal as you say, but there's no small Star Wars role, has your mind gone to thinking, what was this guy's story? Where was he from? What is he about? How did he end up on that planet with Saw Gerrera?
I thought about it for a bit. To be honest, I was more miffed they did my hair in a way that I didn't like, because I thought, I don't like what they've done to my hair. I look at, but whereas my natural hair is a long ponytail, and I thought that would lend itself to quite a cool Star Wars figure. If you did a little bit with it, like braid or something, but they made it out some bouffant thing or weird haircut, and I felt that was a missed opportunity. So I was a bit less interested in my character than I would have been otherwise. If they'd put me in charge of designing my own character, I think I could have done it justice.
You'd have been fine.
Yeah, and but I don't know how he's ended up on that cave planet. But you know, it could be anything in Star Wars, couldn't it?
Yeah.
He could have had all sorts of terrible upbringings on another planet, you know, and crashing spaceships when he's a young boy or something. Who knows?
When we spoke before, you mentioned when we chatted that the actor or actress, I should say, who was stood next to you had an interesting previous career path.
Oh, yes, I mentioned the young lady who used to be a porn star. I didn't really inquire enough more about that, actually, but sadly, you know, and she just blurted it out one day on set. She was just like, oh, I used to do porn, and me being a middle-class, civilised, polite young chap was like, oh, really? Without making any filthy jokes or being vulgar or coming down hard on her religiously or something, you know. But she was lovely, actually. She was one of the nicest people I met on the whole time. But she's now gone on to be a kickboxing champion or something.
Okay.
She's got like medals in beating people up.
Wow.
Yeah. So I didn't want to mess with her. She'd probably beat me up as well. But no, she was lovely. I met this guy who was in the suit. He was like a new, I think he's meant to be an equivalent of a new Chewbacca. You might know his name. Who's the new Chewbacca character? The white guy.
Oh, the big creature. Oh, Ian White was the Morloff. Oh yeah, Morloff. He was in Rogue One, so he was with Saw.
That's the one. I met the guy who's in his shell, and he was not in a good mood. Yeah. No, and I tried to make a joke and make him happy and thought, oh, this guy will love me. And I made a joke and he looked like he wanted to kill me. And he just looked like really grumpy in this big white suit being fed through a straw all day. And he had to stand up. He was in one position standing up for the whole day. And I did feel a bit sorry for him, actually.
As you go to events and conventions over the years, you realise that folks like Warwick Davis, for example, who's obviously not a tall fella, has a hard time of it because the world is not built to his scale. Yeah. And on the other side of the flip side of that is somebody like Peter Mayhew, bless him, had the worst time because he was so big, no chairs fit, everything was too short, and he was constantly feeling it was such a hard slog. When you're on a film set and you see people in the applications, in the costumes and that, do you, I mean, like, obviously you mentioned, I'm assuming it was Ian White, I'm assuming it was him because he was him in Rogue One, but if he's having a rough day, he's probably really feeling it, the thing's heavy and he's hot and stuff. Do you see a lot of that kind of side of it when you're on the set? To
be honest, film sets, unless you're really into it as a high profile member of the crew, there's a lot of sitting around waiting, and it can actually be quite boring making films. And won't be the first person who says that, but because I love films, I get a bit more inspired than people who just do it as a thing. But you get a bit of narkiness with people getting a bit frustrated. I was an extra in a Sex Pistols thing with Danny Boyle as well. Okay. And when we were getting our makeup and hair done, one guy threw a Benny. He went mental. The makeup person, and he was only an extra because they wanted to do his hair in a certain way. Well, I think they wanted to cut his hair. Yeah. And he refused, and there was shouting, arguing, stomping out in a huff. Yeah. And listen, I don't really relate to that sort of behaviour, I suppose, because I'm just raised to be quiet and polite. But no, meeting Danny Boyle was another interesting one. We did a bar in London, and then we had to dance, and I'm not a dancer, and not really, unless I'm thoroughly enjoying myself. And I remember he put me into a close-up position, okay, and there's this chap, I think he's a rapper from America, right. But he was in the Sex Pistols performing like a singer. Right. I think he's famous. Yeah. But he came on stage, and I've got a prime position to, I don't know, look the part in the mosh pit equivalent of this bar. Yeah. And I remember this transvestite just thrusting his groin towards my face quite close. Not right in my face, but my visuals. I will never forget this chap just thrusting his groin with a big heart over his privates. Yeah. And I just burst out laughing during a take. I couldn't take it seriously at all. And that was quite memorable. But that was it's good spirits on film sets generally. I met a guy who was working on one. He said he had a terrible time on another film set where they were being blasted against a wall by water cannons in hardly any clothes for an entire day or something. And he said he had a terrible time, and he never wanted to do it again. Yeah, I suppose it's something you've got to want to, because you know it's going to be lots of sitting around, and although then again, I suppose some people think it's all glamorous and but sitting around, I can do sitting around, but I couldn't do being blasted with water cannons all day and not much clothes or something like that. I don't like being uncomfortable. No. But meeting nice people and just chatting away while you're waiting for your call for 30 seconds work or something. Sure. That's an easy life, really.
Hi, this is Hugh Quashie. I've had great pleasure in recording this interview for Fan4Tracks.
Yeah, but I could have got more work over the last year. 3, 4, 5 jobs I've had to turn down because of my no licence. And I feel that's really holding me back, actually. But there's not much I can do about that.
You're itching now to get that rectified and sorted and get back on it?
I'd have a go at proper acting if someone wanted. I went back to university to get my master's last year as a mature student. And I got asked to do quite a few jobs acting. Yeah. But not being able to remember lines easily is a real problem, obviously. But it's quite fun. And if it turned out that it worked out well, you know, it can be it seems like quite a nice life. But then you always get the horror stories, don't you? So I just have this internal spiritual philosophy now, which just tries to make the most out of every day, really.
It feels like you've got a creative itch that you want to scratch. I mean, if you couldn't do that through acting or film-related stuff, what else would you do?
Well, I've got my Super Doodles cards, my Urban Space Force website, which I work at in the meantime. I make music at home that no one likes. I write books that no one reads. And I love creating. I went into the local pub once and said to the barwoman, I said, I've got graphilia. And she went, you poor chap, what's that? And graphilia is only the love of writing. Okay. But I can write and write and write. Yeah. You know, and but I just haven't particularly got anywhere with it yet. Yeah. But it's more therapeutic and cathartic than anything else.
If I was going to say, from what you've said about taking something spiritual out of the day and feeling like it's a tick in the box. Yeah. If that's an outlet, then you feel like you're winning.
Well, if I've created something during the day, I think that makes things better. And my dad, bless him, got me a nice computer, like a proper supercomputer. Yeah. And I can do Adobe Premiere, Adobe Photoshop, Dreamweaver, Word, Cubase, and I essentially have my own one-man little home studio. I've even got a green screen on my lounge wall.
Nice.
And so I potter around at home creating things, and it keeps me out of trouble, keeps me focused. But I don't have much success because I can never raise a budget or anything like that.
You never know when it's going to land. There are no small characters in Star Wars, so these, sometimes the universe conspires to make these little things come true. So,
well, yeah, one of the other chaps I met on the Star Wars set when we were in the cave is interesting because they will look. The extras company will put out an advert for certain types of, shall we say, not quite your normal person.
Yeah.
So, like, there was what they would have advertised. Do you have a small head?
Okay.
For instance, and there was a guy who had an alien helmet on, who, when he took off his hat, he had a really small head in reality. But you obviously don't say anything, but that's how you get to be the character. And I think they advertise for people, like I've seen in other adverts, do you have a missing limb?
Yes.
Or something like that.
I was just thinking Saving Private Ryan on the beach. It's yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's, anyone can possibly have a chance of being in films. It's just whether the character's written for them or something. I always thought a young girl character who's a bit of a sleuth in a wheelchair would be a good idea. And yet when it comes to she has to get out of perilous situations, but you could do it really dramatically, high speed, through the streets, rocking through on her wheels. And I thought that'd be great because it would show care for the less fortunate community. But you could have a real heroine who's a stunt person in a wheelchair who's always having to escape, and it would be brilliant, I thought. And she's, savvy.
Yeah.
I thought that'd be a good character, but we'll have to see.
I want to see that, huh?
Yeah, it'd be good, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Stunt cop. Yeah. Anything lined up? I mean, you mentioned the cards. You've got some of the cards on the table here at Beachhead.
Well, they're just they're proof of concept, really, for a big idea, which is the Super Doodles. But I haven't done the website yet, and I spent months making just the cards, and that's taken me hours and hours, and they're still not perfect, but I'm pretty happy with my results. Yeah. They look great, and it's an outlet for all my creativity. But we'll just have to see if they lead on anywhere.
Get you back on the road.
We'll see. I like wandering off the beaten track and just being at one, really, because the modern world's got so much, all sorts going on. Where do you start? Yeah. But I'm all right. I'm doing okay these days.
Staying off the grid's not such a bad thing.
Yeah. I've got my blessed mother of my child is actually quite an extreme Christian. And she's often talking about going completely off grid. Yeah. But I don't know. I certainly don't think we're at that position yet where that's warranted. but knowing what she thinks and what I've read of the Bible prophecies, you never know what might happen. But that's for another topic. That I could talk about that for days, and people would just end up terrified because that's what the whole end of the Bible is about, isn't it? It's a book of frightening terror. But so I think, I don't think we're in those immediate last days of Revelation 13 yet. So I don't think there's any need to run to the mountains and the hills just now.
Not quite.
No.
Okay. So next time we talk, we'll pick that conversation up.
That's if you have to find me in a cave. if the Med has really dented the wind turbine.
Well, we know where to find you in the cave because you were Saw Gerrera.
Oh yeah, well, I've worked. I could end up living there. Affection coming stranger than fact. So we'll have to see, but. Yeah, we often have talks about the apocalypse and all these things. Oh, yeah. I'm actually a world-leading authority on the big biblical apocalypse, actually. Okay. But it's not a party piece conversation. No,
not suitable for a family Star Wars podcast.
Not really, no, I suppose not. But it's very interesting. I think everyone should read it just because so we know something. Yeah. But not that anyone knows what it's talking about. No. Because it's one of the most abstruse pieces of literature ever written. But in that, I'm trying to crack the code. It's a sideline hobby of mine, Yeah. I'm always trying to work out what it's meaning. And I don't think I've understood most of it still. But even if I understood a tiny percentage of it, that's more than the majority of humanity at the moment, Anyway, that's another topic. That I should be doing this down church. But I wish I had more to tell you about Star Wars, but I've told you pretty much everything I can remember. And I have my own lightsaber at home as well.
Oh, okay.
Proper light up one, which is nice. So
it's always what we've said about 3 times in this show, and every time anywhere else there are no small Star Wars characters.
No, it's huge. I love Star Wars. I will always love it.
If I was in one frame, I'd dine out on it for the rest of my life.
Would you?
Oh, God, yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm like, today I'm being considered a celebrity. I feel like a bit of a fraud, really. I turned up for a couple of days' work for a bit of fun, and now I'm being invited to events and everything, because...
you were on the intercoms at your Eagle too, so, yeah, you're definitely being referred to as the talent.
Who's it? I'm
kidding.
Right. Yes, I don't. Where did Eagle 2 come from?
I don't know. Just came out the ether.
Right. Well, no, I heard my name mentioned earlier. I thought that was a bit weird. I don't know. We'll have to see where things go. But I'm all right.
Good. Well, thanks for your time.
Pleasure. We'll do it again if we meet again.
We will. Thanks for listening to Making Tracks. If you want to be a part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the free Fantha Tracks app for the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us to send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds at Fanthatracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fantha Tracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Remember, tune in to Good Morning Tatooine. It's live Sunday evenings at 9 o'clock UK, 4 PM Eastern, 1 PM Pacific on Facebook and YouTube. And check out our Fantha Tracks Radio Friday night rotation every Friday night at 7 PM UK time for new episodes of The Fantha from Down Under, Planet Leia, Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, Collecting Tracks, Cannon Fodder, and special episodes of Making Tracks. And that's me done for this episode.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's another episode of Making Tracks.